topic that we are going to talk about today is quantum chromodynamics. And this is actually quite a large topic, and that's your unit 3 in your syllabus. Unit 2 is quantum electrodynamics. So in this unit, every now and then, probably I'll just give you some reference about quantum electrodynamics as well. Okay? When we talk about something like relativistic quantum mechanics and we want to relate it with nuclear physics or high energy physics, quantum chromodynamics as well as quantum electrodynamics, both are very much connected, well connected with the the relativistic quantum mechanics part. Okay, so what we are going to do today is we are going to discuss more about quarks, and we are going to discuss a quantum number which we usually denote it by colors. Okay, it's not really that the quarks are colored, but it's a quantum number which is being given to them to represent them for certain reasons. Okay, and the reason for which they are given this color code is something which you are going to understand today. One more thing, when we discussed about the discovery of top quark in the 1990s, okay, and even the down quark and the strange quark which was discovered even earlier, okay, the one of the main reason why they were detected was because we had such setups. Quarks were never observed in uh, free. Okay, they were not existing in free state. Most of these quarks are usually with hadrons. So you have a proton, you have a neutron, and you have a high end collision, high energy collision between proton, and as a result of which you are able to observe the quarks. So quarks do exist, but they existing as a free state is actually not something which is being observed. Initially when we talked about the Big Bang explosion and all, we also saw that eventually they came up and made a form like proton or neutron, and then only it was stabilized. Otherwise the system was more or less not stable. Okay, so this is what we are going to see here. So one of the points that I'd like to discuss here is non-observance of quarks. Okay, of quarks. So why we don't observe quarks. Okay, we are going to just jot down few important points. Okay, so the first point is quarks have not been observed in free state. Okay, observed in free state. I'll prefer writing this down as I keep on discussing, because this will help you. Okay, and so they are not observed in free state. Then how are we supposed to observe them? So basically they are produced in high energy proton collision, right? So this is something which you already know, high energy proton collision. And where do these collisions takes place and we observe them? We basically observe them in accelerators. Okay, so this is a fundamental idea that we need to remember. And there are some of the reactions which are being investigated, based on which we can say that quarks are actually present. Okay, so investigated reactions. Okay, and I think we can take up this. We can take proton, okay, plus another proton, and then if we just look into the reaction scheme, okay, we can actually again get a proton and a proton, but then on top of that we are going to get a quark, and we are also going to get an anti-quark. Okay, and at the same time there are certain other reactions which are being observed. We can actually have proton plus proton. Okay, and then what happens is we might get proton, and there is also an observance of two up quark. Okay, although these up quark does not remain forever in the surrounding, they have to be detected the moment they have been uh, formed. Okay, and one down quark. So you see this two up quark and one down quark will actually form the proton. But in case of this high energy collision, what happens is that these uh, uh, proton-proton collision will result in making the quarks separated out. So we can have two up quarks and plus one down quark. Okay, so that is also a possibility which is being observed. And here we basically can have a proton, and at the same time we can actually have a anti-quark. So it is Q plus Q bar when you write down the reaction scheme for this. Okay, so I think that is important. Next point, maybe we can talk about, see, this is something which we have discussed before, but then when the quarks are light, the energy that is needed to generate those quarks are actually smaller. Okay, so that kind of situation can be easily generated. Okay, the amount of energy needed is obviously much lesser. Okay, So these lightest quarks are obviously expected to be stable. If you remember yesterday we discussed about the origin of universe, and we said that there was more protons compared to neutron. One of the main reason was neutron was heavier than proton, so they were a bit unstable. So proton were more stable. So if a quark is light, it is stable. So if you look into the table and you see the quarks, you see that up down quarks are more or less more stable because of their light nature. Okay. So this is important, that what is the mass and the charge that the quark carry, based on which they can be detected. Okay. So since it has fractional, okay, we can just write down this word, I guess, fractional electric and baryonic charge. Baryonic charge. So what happens is that if we are actually having a high energy collision, okay, so in case of let's say high collisions, okay, so basically maybe we can talk about cosmic rays, okay, so maybe we can talk about cosmic rays, okay. By there I mean actually the quarks, okay, the quarks are also there, okay, will basically their presence, okay, must be realized. Let me just write down the sentence here. In Earth's crust. So you cannot just go up and then determine it. You might go up to a certain limit, but then when it is too much above the atmosphere, you cannot really have a setup where you can actually really detect it. Okay, so it should be realized in the Earth's crust. Okay, or it must be realized in seawater. Maybe okay, we can have it at that level, or we can also determine it in cosmic bodies. Okay, like meteorites, which basically usually strikes the earth at different parts. Okay, so these can be detected, and these are some natural sources from which we can actually detect the quarks. Okay, but these are not in our hands. That means that when the reaction or when the phenomenon is happening at that particular moment, it needs to be determined, obviously. Okay, so that means it's basically a bigger challenge, but if we can have this man-made system, we can detect it on our own will. But the question lies that how many quarks, or how many quarks are in fact generated when there is any kind of cosmic rays coming in from outer space. Okay, and that is actually what creates more of a difficulty. If you remember neutrino, it's difficult to detect because it's not the neutrino are less in number, the interaction is lesser. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. But for quark, it's certainly a bit of a different case. Okay, so I can say that, but this detection, okay, was not more than, okay, 1 quark per 10. See, what happens is that you will be having a number of particles coming in. Okay, so per 10 to the power 19 protons. Okay, and maybe you can detect in water. Okay, so if you basically detect it in water, so per 10 to the power 19 protons that we have, only 1 quark will be there which needs to be detected, so it becomes a very difficult task. Okay, or if you consider a meteorite, okay, it will basically 1 in every 10 to the power 15. Okay, 10 to the power 15 in meteorites. This actually creates a challenge of detecting the quarks in natural sources. Okay, and this absence of evidence, okay, of free quarks may be attributed to their very large mass. Okay, at that particular scale, if we basically consider the quarks, if the mass is large, it is very difficult to detect. Okay, and their absence might also be because of the mass. Because they have a large mass, they are not really stable, so we don't have that much of quark generation. Okay, may be attributed to their large mass in that particular unit or that particular scale. Okay, and that is also a difficulty that we have. The energy available in accelerators, okay, are not high enough to produce the quarks. So this unit is all about quarks. Okay, and then the origin of quark is important, and also how do we detect it, okay? And that is a very important objective type question. You can take it that way, okay? That we actually should know that how we're supposed to detect the quarks if it is so difficult. So, you know, with advancement of technology, when high energy collision were made possible, then only quarks could have been detected, okay? So, you know, basically when we talk about this, we basically have something which is called the weak bound model. So we basically have a model, weak bound model. So in general, if I want to detect a quark, I must have a hadron associated with it, and I'm going to detect the quark along with the hadron. So you see this particular example, the collision, and from here we can actually detect what is the quark all about, okay? So detecting quark is actually a challenge, okay? And you know, different quarks are there, but then, you know, still there are challenges, and when they are detected, it's a good news, but then it's not like a daily basis exam which you can keep on doing on a daily basis, and you can actually keep on finding the quarks, okay? Becomes difficult. Okay, so what exactly are we going to talk about in quantum chromodynamics, okay? So whenever we are actually looking into these reactions, some of the principles, okay, like let's say the Pauli's exclusion principle seems to be violated. How I am going to tell that? Quantum chromodynamics, that means we are color coding the quark, helps us to remove those anomalies, okay? So this is something which we are going to do in quantum chromodynamics, and that is why the entire unit is important. Such some anomalies, okay, I'll tell you what are the anomalies here, okay, can be removed on the basis of theory of quantum chromodynamics. So you know, whenever we are basically going to have any kind of reaction, okay, and we say that the reaction is happening, and we want to also keep in mind the quantum nature of the atoms or the elements, okay, we need to include some principles like the Pauli's exclusion principle. And there we say that, okay, if they are having different quantum states, okay, they are different particles altogether. They might have a different angular momentum, they are different particles altogether, okay? And n value, spin value, all these are nothing but quantum numbers, okay? At some point you will see that all these quantum numbers are there, but still they are in the same energy state. So in a way they are violating the um, Pauli's exclusion principle, okay? And that is actually something which is dealt with in quantum chromodynamics. So some anomalies can be removed on the basis of the theory of quantum chromodynamics, and it was first suggested in 1973. So you know, these quantum properties that we usually observe is again a very difficult task. Initially there are some theories given, and based on this some reactions are seen, and then it is observed that no, these reactions are actually happening. So we should have some theoretical explanation for that, and based on that these quantum numbers are being associated with them, okay? So what is the failure in quark studies, okay, or quark structure we can say, of hadrons? I'll just give you an example, very simple example. I think you can always keep it with you, okay? And there was actually an apparent failure. Initially it was not observed, but then when everything became so quantum mechanics based, okay, this Pauli's exclusion principle was actually observed to be failed, okay? Apparent failure of Pauli's exclusion principle. So the Pauli's exclusion principle failed, okay? So what exactly happened is something which we are going to discuss in this particular unit, okay? So if we talk about something like quantum field theory, you know, basically is a high energy part, okay, part of high energy physics only. But since we have some restrictions in the syllabus, we don't have a details of this. But you know, nowadays theoretical work, if people are working on quantum field theory, it's very much in demand, okay? So quantum field theory, what happens is in which the strong interaction is described, okay, in terms of an interaction between quarks, okay, okay, mediated by gluons. So you know, whenever we are talking about quarks, we have them interacting with each other, and there should be some particle which should be there, some virtual particle, and that is something which we call as gluons. Okay, they're also the reason for we have um, strong interaction or the strong nuclear force. Okay, so both quarks, okay, these are all quantum particles again, so they must be associated with some quantum numbers. So both quarks and gluons, okay, being assigned a quantum number called color. So color is a quantum number which is being associated with the gluons and quarks. Okay, so and this is why we have called it as quantum chromodynamics. Okay, and one more thing, I think we can just write it down as note here. Gluons are basically nothing but gauge bosons. We have already seen it in the standard model. Okay, so in case somewhere it's written gauge boson, you should not get confused. Okay, and maybe one more point I can say, quantum electrodynamics and quantum chromodynamics, okay, are basically a special field. Okay, it's basically a special version, we can say, of relativistic field theory. Okay, relativistic field theory. So, this is also a branch of physics, and then if someone asks you what exactly you study in quantum electrodynamics or quantum chromodynamics, you can say we are basically studying about relativistic field theory. So by field here, we mean that we do have the interaction between the quarks, okay, or the hadrons, okay, and all of them are actually related with some kind of field, okay, and that is what we actually relate it with. So it's basically compared with something which is highly energetic, and that's why we relate it with relativistic field theory. And in general, if we just consider quarks, okay, we know that these are nothing but spin half particles. Okay, so if they are spin half particle, we know that they usually observe the Fermi-Dirac statistics. Okay, so Fermi-Dirac statistics is something which is being observed, right? So this is what is observed in quarks. Let's take up an example of a baryon. Let's say take up an example of baryon. Okay, and the baryon that I am going to consider is nothing but delta. Okay, so I have a baryon, okay, delta, and if you look into the table of the elementary particle, you will get this, okay, delta plus plus. And then every now and then I keep on asking you the component of particle, okay, particular elementary particle, and then you need to remember what is its component, what is its composed of. So this baryon is usually composed of up and up quark, right? And quarks are having spin half, so that means all of these up quark are having a spin half. So in a way we can say that since they are together in the same energy state and they all have got spin half, okay, and then they look like they are having a similar property, we can just say that apparent, that means it looks like there is a failure of Pauli's exclusion principle. But that cannot be true, right? Because I cannot say the Pauli's exclusion principle has failed, because this particle has been observed. It is known that it is composed of 3 up quarks. So how can it say that it's violating Pauli's exclusion principle? And that is the word apparent. That is why the word apparent is used. That means superficially it looks like it has failed, but it has not failed. Okay. So if I just want to write down or explain this, that how does it given estimation that the Pauli's exclusion principle has failed when we're talking about delta particle, okay, probably you can write down these lines. Okay, so 3 identical spin half particles. Okay, so these are 3 identical spin half particles. Okay, so they basically will combine, right? So maybe I can write down the entire sentence here. Combine to produce. I'll suggest all of you to please make your notes, okay, at the same time, because you don't have much time, to produce symmetric ground state. So if you're talking about a delta particle which is existing and you can detect it, that means it is a kind of stable state, and that means they are in the ground state. Whenever it's in an excited state, we cannot really say that it's much stable, right? So it's the ground state. To reproduce So if you just look into any kind of elementary particle, we can actually just know their properties. Okay, so reproduce all known properties of delta. So they can be in the ground state and they are basically having all the properties which is there. Okay, now this particular statement that I am giving actually violates the Pauli's exclusion principle. This violates, okay, Pauli's exclusion principle. And this is something which we see, but then it is observed. So that means it's not really something which is there, but it looks like as if it has violated the Pauli's exclusion principle, but it's not. Okay, so let's try to see what exactly can be done here. And you know, this particular fact that I'm talking about is also true. Okay, maybe I can just wrote it down here. Okay, so this statement that I've given is, this is also true for proton. Now proton is basically composed of two up quarks, one down quark. So you know there are two up quarks, so that means it's violating Pauli's exclusion principle. And of course neutron. Okay, down. So this is what is happening here. So that is why we have this different way of representing it. Okay. So this is the first problem, okay, that is getting violated here. So let's take up this as number one. There is one more issue, okay. Let's just list down the second issue, okay. So, you know, in general, what happens is there is a sequence which these baryons and mesons will follow, and you will observe this, okay. It's not a very difficult thing to observe. You just look into this table and you know, okay. Sequence of baryons, okay, antibaryons and mesons are, so baryons are usually composed of three quarks, okay, quark, and then antibaryon, if you see, it will be antiquark, okay. Maybe I'll just use the symbol. And if you just look into the mesons, and most of the times it will be nothing but quark. So whenever I'm asking you a question on the composition of any of the elementary particle, many a times I have observed that you usually just write it down randomly, and many of you are wrong most of the times. So this is a good way to remember that if you need to know the element that we are talking about, is it a baryon, then it will be composed of only three quarks. If it is anti-baryon, then it will be composed of three antiquarks. If it is a meson, on the other hand, it will be composed of one quark and one antiquark. Any of the quarks and antiquarks, okay? So we have to just look into that composition. So this is basically a thumb rule that you need to remember, okay? But then, you know, other, if you just look into the quark composition of other possibilities, okay, but other possible combinations, okay, so what are the other possible combinations, okay, such as let's say quark, there are only two quarks forming a heavier particle which is more stable, not observed. You can have two antiquarks, not observed, okay, etc. Or single quarks are not observed. Quarks are not observed. So why they are not observed? This is something which we are going to understand. Okay. So you know this is the aim of this particular chapter. Okay, to understand how does quantum chromodynamics work, or why do we need an additional quantum number. Please, when you write these things down, please make a note of the bar that I have used. Okay. So these are the two difficulties that we have. So that was the first difficulty, right? The first one that I have shown, and this is the second problem, okay, that we have usually. So this is number two. First problem was it violated the Pauli's exclusion principle if you consider something like a delta particle, a baryon, or if you consider something like proton or neutron. Okay, but then if we just look into The second problem, we know that baryons, antibaryon and mesons are usually denoted by you have this combination, but if we have just two quarks, it is not observed. One quark, it is again not observed, okay? Or you basically have a quark and an a quark, okay? Two antiquarks combining, that is also not something which is getting observed. And we are going to just explain this in terms of this, okay? So maybe that's why I've just marked this as 1 and 2, okay? So because these are the two difficulties that we need to overcome, and this is something which is done by quantum chromodynamics. So to overcome, so understand this, okay? This is very important. 1 and 2. I'm just writing it down as 1 and 2, okay? I think you understand now what is 1 and 2 I mean. Okay. You have to actually define a new property, okay? So that means we are actually defining a new quantum number of quarks. So new property of quarks. So this basically generates a new property altogether, and this is basically known as color was produced, okay? And this was actually given by, you know, we talked about Gelman, okay, if you remember, and Zwick. I think I've also shown you the image. So Gelman and Zwick actually did this in the year 1963. Okay, so these things were realized, and then they actually have done this in the year 1963. So timeline is important, but even if you don't remember the year, it's fine for now. Okay. So what they did was they said that quarks have three primary colors. So by primary color, I hope all of you know that red, green and blue are the primary colors. Okay, it's a good way to represent them, but then you know it's not literally they're red in color or blue in color or green in color. Okay, so we'll just take it to be red, green and blue. I do have a clue, so I will write blue. Okay. So what happens is, in general, if I just want to write down a quark now, what I will do is probably I will write it down in this way. Okay, I can take a quark red, a quark which is green in color, and a quark which is blue in color. And I guess by now you understand that now if we do it this way, we understand that this does not violate the Pauli's exclusion principle, because we have introduced another quantum number, the color code, okay, and this is a different color code, so that means all these particles have a different color code altogether. Okay, so using this scheme, okay, we can just say using this scheme, what we have is this. Now I said that initially we have this feeling that this delta plus plus, this was actually a failure, but then now if you see, it's basically composed of up and up quark, but it's not just up, it's up red is the quantum number, up green is the quantum number, up blue is the quantum number, RGB. So if you combine red, green and blue, you are going to get a white color which is neutral. So in general, in nature, if something is existing and having a stable state, the chances are that this combination will give out a white color. So this is the logic behind. See, this particle is more stable than this, and that's why its existence is possible. On the other hand, if you just look into such combination like single quark, just red, just green or just blue, so they are not neutral. White is basically considered as neutral. Okay, and that is why we can basically just consider this to be white in color, and as a result this is more stable. So their logic goes that way. Okay, so you know, in general what we can say is color is the term here, is the conserved additive quantum number. Okay, write it down, conserved additive quantum number. Okay, so this is the conserved additive quantum number that we actually have. Okay. Okay, so now I will probably give you one question which you can actually work on, and let's see if you can actually find out the answer. Okay, the question is, if you have understood the logic that we are talking about, why, I'm not going to ask it today, you have to just take out some time and just check possible combinations, okay, 2 or 3 of colors are not observed, okay, in, sorry, I should not write down 3 is observed. So why possible combinations 2 of colors are not observed in nature? That means we are talking about this QQ or Q bar and so on. Okay, so you cannot have two. So suppose you have got a green. Sorry, I'll just write down this here so that things becomes a bit more clear. We have got red, green, and blue, and their complementary color are actually nothing but R bar, G bar, and B bar. So these are nothing but basically the complementary of red, complementary of green, and complementary of blue, which will be the possible combination or the possible quantum number for the antiquarks that we are taking. Okay, so this is probably a question for you, and then one more representation would be this. Let's say talk about protons, right? So if you talk about protons, we are actually having it as up, and down. Okay, so now we actually need to represent them in terms of the color quarks. Up red, okay, and then up green, down blue. So all of them has got 3 different quantum numbers. Okay, in a way we do know that up and down are different quarks altogether. Okay, they have different quantum numbers, but on the other hand, if you just look into this color combination, it is observed that it should be red, green, and blue to actually satisfy the Pauli's exclusion principle in a way. Okay, so this is there. So that example or the question of nature that I've asked you. Okay, let me go back to the previous slide. Why possible combination 2 of colors are not observed in nature? Okay, just think about this answer based on the logic that I said. Okay, please remember, red, green, and blue combined will give you white. Okay, and this white color is something which will actually define how nature works. Okay, so think about it and probably you can have an easy answer for this. Okay, but let me just draw one Venn diagram for you. Okay, so I don't have a shape of a circle here, so I don't know how perfect I'll be able to draw it, but then I'll just try. Just consider this to be a circle. Okay, and maybe I can take one more here, and then we can take one more here. Okay, so these are the 3 circles, and let's say I have got one color here, green. So this is a quark, this is also a quark, and this is also a quark, and this is a Venn diagram usually. So let's say this is green, let's say this is red, and let's say this is blue. Okay, just to keep the things clear, G will basically stands for green. Okay, and then R will stand for red, and then B will stand for blue. You just use that symbol here. Okay, and if you are having a combination of these 2 quarks, what you are going to have here is a anti-quark on this side. Okay, and then here also you can expect a anti-quark, and then here also you can expect a anti-quark. Okay, so this is a part where green and blue combine. Green and blue, if they combine, you are going to get an anti-quark. Okay, and green and blue is basically going to give a color which is complementary to red, so this is R bar. Okay, on the other hand, red and blue, if they combine, you are going to get a color which is complementary to green, so your G bar will be here. Okay, and then finally if this part, okay, this part if you're talking about, that means green and red are combining, you are going to get a complementary blue. So this is going to be the complementary color. Now think about the case, what are the colors that usually we have, okay, and probably we can discuss it the other day. At the center where we have red, green and blue, all three of them combining, we are basically writing it as, let's say, P, okay, and P is nothing but red plus green plus blue, okay, and this is something which is going to give us white. So this image will explain why we have red, green and blue as the possible quantum number as suggested by quantum chromodynamics and Gell-Mann in the year 1963 for proton. Similarly for neutron. If you combine red, green and blue, they are white in color, and this will signify that this particular elementary particle, not elementary in true sense, but then this is something which you observe, this particular stable particle we can say is more or less existing in nature in free state. So we basically can observe this more easily compared to these. Okay. So this is actually a very important diagram, and I think from this diagram you can basically understand this. Okay. And please understand, again and again I'm saying this, that it's not something which you are actually really saying about colors. We are not saying that they are having this color, okay. So this is basically nothing but what we call as analogous to color in optics. So this is analogous to color in optics, okay, and that is why we are actually saying this. So this is again important.